Rolling Stone, take 8.
The Bob Dylan story in itself is a story about being an artist and how we find our way in the world. One of the things that's most important to me are the performances, is the collaboration with the actors.
Once upon a time, you're just so fine, through the bums of dime in your prime.
Timmy and I, it's been 5 years working on this movie together.
It was important for me to sing and play live because if I can actually do it, why should there be an element of artifice here? And I'm proud that we took that leap.
You used to laugh about.
There's 40 songs in the movie that he performs live on guitar and harmonica and singing live take after take after take.
I had goosebumps. You can see how much love and how hard he's worked and how much he cares about getting this right.
How does it feel?
I see you in there.
It's a true feat to do these songs. It was a process, man.
Now I taught the weeping willow how to cry.
Always somehow made it his own. You know, it feels just as authentic and true as Johnny Cash, but sort of brings his own energy to it.
The bass is among you, male or female. Here's what you sing. Getting to learn and play the music itself was a huge hook for me.
Edward probably got the least amount of time of any of us to wrap his head around the character. He did an extra, I mean, he fully went for it.
I didn't play guitar. I could kind of play the ukulele, and I'd sing in the shower. That was pretty much where I started this.
I remember just listening to her and just, she's singing that? Is that Joan or is that her?
Go away from my window. Much of working on the music actually gave me so much insight into who she was and what the time was like.
There's an energy and chemistry to the interaction between a performer and a live audience that's just different.
We're set up to record all of the performances for real. All of the microphones are real period microphones. All the instruments are real period instruments.
We have done this movie 100% live. There's no earpiece, there's no timing mechanism or anything.
There's a lot that has to happen to feel authentic to them on stage. It has to feel real, like a live show. And a lot of Bob's performances are improvised, so for Timmy to be up there and make each performance his own is incredible.
You know what I was so proud of with every actor in this was everyone fiercely defended their real-life counterpart.
It's a movie about music that is unadorned and authentic. You could feel the thing working for everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I want you to give a warm welcome to our friend, Mr.
Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan has written some of the most iconic songs of the last century.
Bob and his music reigns over culture.
I'm so infatuated with lyrics and songwriting, and that was Bob's genius.
Every music moment is super grounded and has a purpose. It's story-driven, it's character-driven. It was clear that we needed to do everything live.
I ain't gonna work on Maggie's farm no more.
It was important for me to sing and play on set because it was in the spirit of the movie to do it live.
He learns the entire thing, top to bottom. That's harmonica and guitar and vocal. It's pretty special.
Woody wants to hear something. You shy?
Not usually.
Come gather round, people, wherever you roam.
He was writing music that was more blunt about things that were going on.
Bob wouldn't let himself be boxed in, which for me as a young artist is the most inspiring.
For the times they are a-changing.
His genius and the power of his songs and personality ends up elevating him till he's bigger than the movement he was taken into.
Many of the artists through American pop culture that had the balls to turn their back on what was expected of them, that moment started with Bob.
Once upon a time, you're just so fine, through the bums of dime in your prime. Didn't you?
Bob has really resisted categorization. He has resisted being put in a box.
I'm not sure they want to hear what I want to play, Johnny.
Make some noise, BD. Track some mud on the carpet.
Oh, how does it feel?
These words are relevant. Times that are changing is relevant. Blowing in the wind is relevant.
This music's still all over the radio.
He changed folk music forever and music forever.
Like a complete unknown. Like a rolling stone.
One of the things I loved about the film last night was watching a film with a focus, with this 4-year focus.
And I wondered, why it was useful to you, or if it was useful to you, to have like a sort of a part of his life, not to tell the whole story, not to try and sort of, broad strokes, but to have a part of your life and to inhabit Dylan when he was kind of creating himself.
Yeah. Well, this was a fascinating period of Bob Dylan's life because in some ways it's the least chronicled. This is the period of his life that has the least footage accompanying it, particularly 1961 and 1963. So I didn't choose what dates the movie set in, and based on my age, I can only play within a certain range anyway. But this is a sort of a fascinating period because it's, as you said, when he actualized becoming Bob Dylan, and when he obviously made this sort of historic transition from folk music to rock and roll.
How excited were you when this project came across your desk?
I was excited when I saw the press release that Timothée was going to play Bob Dylan and that James Mangold was going to direct a film about Bob Dylan. As a fan growing up, I was like, I want to see this movie. I'll be the first person to buy a ticket. But then I got another amazing surprise when Jim called me and said that there might be a part for me in the movie, which was, I don't know, in so many ways I feel like I've been manifesting getting this part like one day because I have been a really big fan of him since 13. So, I'm not the biggest Dylanologist in the world. I don't know every date or tour, but I just love the music. So,
what is it about this period of time in America that particularly interests you, and what was it about Bob's story that you wanted to tell?
It's a good question. I find myself telling a lot of stories about the 60s. It's true. And it is a fascinating moment for me. I do think it's a turning point in world culture and certainly in the United States where modernism had arrived and modern issues had arrived in the sense of fear of nuclear annihilation and in the sense of a new kind of global politics in terms of civil rights, in terms of women's rights, and artistically that there was suddenly a kind of expansion of how we had ever seen everything since the post-war period. But I also think, maybe I'm visiting. I was born in 1963, so it's like visiting a time which you don't completely remember but have some kind of foggy, childlike vision of.
How did you get to the point where your blood feels like Bob's blood, where your intonation feels more natural to you than Timothy's intonation?
Well, a lot of work, a lot of time studying all his music and studying the way he was.
And what was that journey like, man? Because I know that it helped that, obviously, lockdown happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop-start process.
Mm-hmm.
So did that mean you could give yourself to it?
Yeah, exactly. I have more time, we were supposed to shoot it the summer of 2020, then there was the pandemic. Then we were supposed to shoot it the summer of 2023, so there was the actor strike. So there was a lot of time available to me to sink into all of this stuff, the way he was as a human, his guitar playing, all the books available about Bob, the books available about his contemporaries, about Joan Baez, about Paul Clayton, about that period of music. And just, it became a curiosity at some point. It felt less like work and more just something that I was just deeply passionate and obsessed about.
Where do you begin trying to figure out how to make the role your own?
I know it's a thing that people have sort of talked about. I mean, I don't really feel like I was working to make Joan my own. The intention was not to mimic her or have the portrayal be any kind of imitation of her. But I really wasn't trying to infuse myself in this either. I think it was just about getting as close as I could to embodying her, to understanding maybe how she ticks, what she might be thinking in any given moment. But then for me, the work was sort of letting all of that go and just being present with usually Timmy in the scene, or, Timmy as Bob, very much so Bob, not even really Timmy. And trusting the writing on the page and Jim's direction and his orchestration of these scenes. letting go and responding to what our wonderful audiences were giving us. But I really don't feel like I was putting my stamp on it. I think that's inevitable because it is through me, but that really wasn't something that I actively tried to do.
And what did you make of her relationship with Bob? I mean, her character's been renamed in the film.
Yes. Well, I think that was the challenge of the part, was that I am playing the one person that isn't well known, and she's the one, she's not musical, she doesn't sing or play instruments with him. So it was making sure that I was able to kind of overcome just being the girlfriend part, because obviously, there's so much more to her and so much more to what she did and how she inspired Bob in that time. She was very politically involved. She was an activist in the 60s, and Bob wasn't so much into politics until he met her and she introduced him to that world. She was an artist in her own right. She was a painter, and you can Google, there's so many songs that he has written about Suze and that relationship. Boots of Spanish Leather, and the list is very long. And she also inspired him to sing his own music and his own songs. So I wanted to capture all of that, but also show her strength and autonomy and who she was, and because there is such a beautiful kind of vulnerability to her and a longing for something. I think she was there out of such a pureness of heart and love for him, and she didn't want to gain anything. She wasn't looking for fame. So it's just beautiful how pure it was. But there is a longing, because she wants him to not be a mystery, but he's always going to pick his art over any woman, as you see in the film.
What it adds, you think, to the overall experience that they're going to that effort, that they're learning to play these instruments, they're learning to perform like these characters. Why is that important?
Well, the converse would be impossible in my mind, meaning at least for these movies, when you have artists whose whole brand, who the identifying attribute of their music is its authenticity, its earnestness, its honesty, to do that in a way where it's not even their own voice coming out of their mouth seems a contradictory notion from the beginning. But on top of all that, this idea of doing it live as much as you can is, to me, to free the actor to be able to bend the song, to be able to become inspired while in the scene, because the song isn't just a song, it's a part of a scene. So if they're feeling stress from someone off stage, if they're carrying the baggage of the previous scene into the playing of this song, then there's multiple levels to the scene. How they're feeling, the feeling they brought into the scene, who's listening, who's watching, and the actor, when you're talking about the kind of incredible actors I get to work with, takes advantage of all that material to make something new happen.
So what was that, man? Was that to get to that moment when you're ready to step out, even in front of a bunch of background artists, and do that to your own standards?
Yeah.
Which I believe are extremely high.
Yeah.
When do you feel ready? How do you know if you're ready?
I don't know if I ever was. There was either a tremendous lack of self-respect and no self-esteem, or the total opposite, an egomania or something. But I just felt, I just love this music, and I love the opportunity to get to do it live, particularly with the old microphones and the old theaters and the old reverb. And I love these original recordings, like the Brandeis University recordings of Bob Dylan, or some of the coolest songs he ever put out. So I just fancied getting the opportunity to do it myself.
I just want to ask you about what the atmosphere is like in the room on those days that you're performing, that you're watching others perform. What kind of magic is in the air, I suppose?
It really did feel very magical to watch each other perform. My very first day, I was shooting outside the Chelsea Hotel, but before that it was, I got to watch Ed on the steps of City Hall, and every time I drive by it in New York now, I feel the weight of that moment, and that was just incredible to see him play and perform immediately. And then same with Timmy, getting to rehearse the music with him was like mind-blowing. And then to see him up there performing and captivating an audience was, it really was magical. I think when it came to my own, it was mostly terror, especially in the beginning, and especially with that song because I knew the weight of it. It's a very difficult song. It's slow. It's an early song for Joan. You have to sort of like, there's a tall order and that you have to win over the audience and show them someone they recognize as Joan. But the more we performed, the more comfortable it became. And then by the time we were playing It Ain't Me, Babe, and Mama, You've Been on My Mind, we're just having a blast. That was just really, really fun. And we only had so many takes, and it just was like we had gotten it at that point. And so it felt celebratory and fun, and you could lace in all of the emotion with it. And so it's a different kind of magic, I think.
There's such beautiful complexity between the relationship with the two of them. Can I ask just about the experience? You worked with Timmy before.
Yes.
The experience of bringing that to life with him.
Well, I'd worked with him when I was 19, and actually, Call Me By Your Name hadn't even come out yet when I worked with him, so not that I would say he's completely like Bob, but the trajectory of the career is kind of similar, and our relationship in the film and life, meaning I knew him before he became, Timothée Chalamet in a lot of ways, and how, Sylvie is the really only person that knew Bob before he became so famous. So it was nice that we knew each other before, and there's always a safety there, and you feel more comfortable with them because you've worked with them before. And we're quite silly together, and there's a warmth. So I think we could bring that, especially to the earlier years of Sylvie and Bob's relationship. It was nice to kind of bring a little bit of that into them. But it was, also just from a standpoint of getting to act with him as Bob, he's so brilliant. Like, I knew how great of an actor he was, and I always knew that he would rise the challenge and do it, but I think how much so he did, it really blew me away and, exceeded any of my expectations. He's so incredible in this.
I want to know, what it was like to have Ed there and to have Elle there and people that kept you in the world?
Yeah, well, they were all massively invested the way I was massively invested. So they were just ultra present and defensive of their characters in a sense, very protective over all their characters in the perfect way. Everyone was in their own movie in a sense. So they were really instrumental in helping me go about what I was doing because they just brought life to it, This wasn't some cushy project where people were showing up for the paycheck. Everybody was going extremely hard.
Well, and this movie captures such a specific period of time in that early 60s, this sort of hive of creativity in Greenwich Village.
Yeah.
Can I ask what you made of the way that this world had sort of been recreated, brought back to life?
Man, we filmed, a lot in New York, but also a lot in New Jersey, because obviously the New York streets, a little bit too modern now. They don't look like they did in the 60s. So we created, the amazing production design team created the 60s village and Cafe Wa and Minetta on these New Jersey streets, and it was, of course, it helps you kind of walking into that world and being in those costumes. Ariane Phillips was our costume designer, who, her work is so authentic and incredible in this movie. She had, I think also Timmy had 75 costume changes, but also such an evolution of growth of a character, watching him, from the little cap and scarf to going to the full leather, Ray-Bans Dylan that we know. So to be in that time, it is like a little time capsule, and I liked being there. There's something more romantic to it, no cell phones, and I also particularly love that I find this sweet that we're watching an old movie in a film that's in the 60s. I don't know, going to see that Now Voyager Betty Davis film on the date. I also think that the Sylvie and Bob relationship, there's a kind of old Hollywood romantic film. There's something there between them, the way that Jim shot their relationship feels like an old Hollywood on-screen couple, you know, how it ends and the romance of it all.
In the center of the nucleus of the atom, if you like, is Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan. Tell me about the partnership with Timmy.
Well, it's gone on over 5 years, and when you have an actor with his ambition and power and talent, and also he's really smart, like really smart in an intellectual way and in an instinctual way about the material itself. The script, I would be writing and reading in pages over the phone. We would, even while we were shooting, we would talk to each other almost every night and go over the next day's work. I find him to be a wonderful friend and collaborator, but also it's kind of the relationship that's necessary if you want a performance like he gives in this film, which is that the director and the actor really have to be walking hand in hand.
I wanted to know how useful, a director is. It feels like it must have been such a personal journey. What does James offer you on that journey? What's his value?
He offered me a masterful guiding hand because he had done this before with Joaquin Phoenix, Walk the Line. His trust, but also really his I'd say most of all just his prescience to see through the idea that this had to be factual and step-by-step recreations of how it was, that we had major artistic license here, that the whole exercise was about artistic license.